Okay, I hereby call to order the special meeting of the Board of Trustees of the East Central Independent School District beginning at 5:30, held on July 30th, 2024, at the beginning of 5:30 to order. Madam Secretary, may I have the roll call, please?
Ginger Friesenhuis. Here. Victor Garza.
Here.
John Messinga. James Mulkey.
Here.
Joe Brazil is here. Emilio Carrasco.
I'm here.
And Monique Price is
Here. So we the first, prayer and pledge. Who is going to do that?
Mr.
first?
McKay.
Would y'all please bow your heads? Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day, Lord. Again, we just thank you for the people in this room and the commitment and sacrifice, Lord. We just thank you for their leadership and what they give, Lord. We just continue to ask that you provide a hedge of protection around our students and their staff and the entire Central community. We ask that you just protect everyone as we leave tonight and continue to provide us wisdom and discernment in our decision making. Because in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let's go ahead and stand for the pledge. We'll face that way. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor
the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Do we have any public comments?
No public.
So with that said, we will move into item 5, executive session. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, attorney consultation regarding legal issues related to Level 3 parent grievance process.
Yeah, I believe David.
5:32.
We're back on the record in open session, having returned from closed session. The time is now 7:19 p.m. Does any board member have a motion regarding the grievance presented by the parents?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I move to deny the Level 3 parent-student complaint and additionally to deny the remedies sought by Mr. and Mrs. Showers.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And at this time, we'll take a brief recess for about, 5 minutes? 10 minutes, 10 minutes. We'll be back at 7:30. If everybody's back and ready, we can start early. So, let's see, the next item on the agenda is number 6, superintendent reports, 6.1, facility study update.
Trustees, I know you're pretty familiar with kind of where the committee is beginning to be with regard to the propositions that they're refining for the recommendation that we bring into you guys at the August regular meeting, which is on the 15th. And so what we wanted to bring to you tonight was more detail about what some of you have seen recently. It kind of encompasses all of it, but also kind of shows where we think we are with regard to all of the projects and the tax impact, so we can kind of get a little bit of direction to continue to refine what the facility study committee is considering proposing to you guys or recommending. So, Mr. McKay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I'm just going to jump right into it. You do have an accompanying packet that's there, so if you want to follow along. But you can see the journey that we've taken with the facility study going all the way back to January 23rd, and the number of times that we've pulled the larger group together to really talk and discuss on our findings, what information we've had. So it's been incredible to see their progress. We've been very thankful for how hard they've worked. I think some of you saw in our last facility study committee meeting just how engaged they are throughout this entire process. It's been incredible. As a reminder, after we had the January 23rd, we broke up into smaller subcommittees to go out, get into the field, look at the facilities, and then come back to make recommendations. So you can see how many times the athletic facilities subcommittee met separate and apart from the larger group committee, and then we broke up into extracurricular and technology subcommittees. So they looked at things like the band programming, they looked at dance, cheer, those types of programs as well, JROTC, FFA, And then as well as technology, they looked at where our technology infrastructure is, made some recommendations. So there was additional meetings beyond that. And then last but not least, we know because of our recent PASA study that we are getting to the point where a second high school needs to be considered. So we pulled in a small team of community members and really had some discussions around what would a second high school look like. And as you're aware, we also sent out community surveys to get feedback from them on what we would look at moving forward. So here's where we're at right now with current committee recommendations. So Prop A is going to be the TRE, which is the tax ratification election. We're not going to really refer to it as that when we're educating the community. If you so choose to call for the election, we're going to refer to it as Prop A. What we're going to ask the community is to add 5 cents to the M&O. Remember, that's the maintenance and operations side. That's what covers things of being able to just run the district. Predominantly, most of this money is going to go towards teacher salaries, which I'll refer to in a minute. What this will do is we're going to generate $3.6 million in local revenue from our taxpayers, but because we're using what's called golden pennies, the state's guaranteeing us $2.6 million, which will get all of that in perpetuity. The state's already designated; they're giving money to some district, why not East Central, for us to consider, and that would be 2.6 that we would continue to get from there in perpetuity. In combination, it would be 6.2 million that we'd be able to add if the voters approve this in November to our M&O to be able to cover. What those would be able to cover particularly would be teacher and staff salaries. Obviously, with cost of living, we've not gotten any increases from the state when it comes to the student allotment. We're essentially operating with the same amount we are since 2017. It's becoming more and more challenging to provide those raises, as Mr. Toscano, and I know is very diligently spoken with you guys about in the past. So this will allow us to continue to provide raises for us to recruit, but also to retain our most highly effective teachers. And then, as you're also aware, the state continues to come down with more and more safety standards and requirements unfunded. And so we're having to continue to stay up. The only way we've been able to fund the projects we have now is through competitive grants. But obviously, as you know, that's not a sustainable way for us to continue to stay up with the security enhancements. One of those being having armed officers on every campus. That also is not cheap as well. So Prop B would be for new schools and facilities, which I'll unpack here in a minute. But for new schools, one of the things that we noticed with the demographic study is look at where Harmony is going to be in 25, 26. They're going to be at 120% capacity at 971 by 25. And if you go down to Tradition, by 27, 28, they're going to be back over 1,000 students again. So they're going to rise very rapidly based on the growth in the north and the south end of the district. If you notice the accelerant on the south end versus the north, so you'll see where the recommendation would be if you call for the election, that if we were to pass, we would build elementary school at the south before we would go the other direction. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, East Central High School, 2 numbers that I think are really important to pay attention to is the combined number between Cassidy High School and East Central High School. So in 27, 28, we're already going to be at almost 4,600 students that'll be on this campus, which is pretty incredible. And then at 28, 29, we'll be over 5,000 total students in just 4,600, which means that we're at 120% capacity. As a reminder to you about what 120% capacity means, there is no classroom that's empty at any time. Everybody will be floating into classrooms during the conference periods to be able in there, but that also means we're using libraries, cafeterias, stages, rehearsal rooms, things like that to become now teaching spaces because we don't have enough space for these teachers to be able to teach out of. So the recommendation from the PASA study, we can see where we're at in the bond 2022. We're moving in that direction. Bond 2024, you can see that they recommend, I apologize, they recommend north and then south in 2 subsequent years. You can already see for the high school, we're behind schedule based on what they were recommending in the past. So this is it's a part of the project. So what's all in Prop B? New comprehensive high school, I have a star on there because I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in detail in just a second. 2 new elementary schools, one in the north, which would be number 10, and then the one on the south, which would be number 11. Agricultural barn renovations. So the committee that went out there said we've got to do some things to update the barn to make it more friendly for us to have our projects in there, as well as we need to revamp that whole space for them to do that, as well as we're going to need to increase attendance. If we build a second high school, the thought is that we would leave this as the magnet school for our FFA program. We're getting more and more kids that are not coming from rural areas, they're coming in from the inner city. They won't have spots to be able to store their animals. This would give them pens to be able to raise their animals and prepare them for shows as they come. So we're needing more and more space and we need to modernize the pins that are currently there as well. New Gym 2, as we have discussed in the past, our current gym is not really designed for Gym 2 and for sub-varsity athletics. Is not designed for competition, but if you do host it in there, it becomes a safety concern. Right now, the roof is needing to be repaired, which is going to cost us over $600,000. The weight room that's upstairs, the engineers have said it is not good for you to continue to use that over time. You're going to have to consider some other spaces. So the opportunity is for us to put it in Gym 2. The reason why we're able to put it in Prop B is because it will be used for PE. So it will be used throughout the day for instruction. So it now is included as an instructional facility. It will house all the indoor sports. They'll have locker rooms, weight rooms, training facilities, offices. Will all be inside of that. And then additional land acquisition. I'll go over those counts because as we grow, we're going to have to purchase land in advance as we're going to look to build new facilities for the district. So the new comprehensive high school, we reached out to the community, and even after we did the study that I know many of you got a chance to hear, the scientific poll that happened, the community spoke out and said, we don't want to do a phase-in, we want a full comprehensive. So for us to do a full comprehensive, the thought was we're going to build out for a 2,200 student population campus with a core for eventually 3,200, which was also what we found out through surveying the community, is that they wanted to be able to be the size of this current campus now, which would delay the need for a third high school, which you remember the demographic study shows that we're right around the corner from already talking about a third high school. So by building in the core, which means if we have everything we need to in a subsequent bond, we would just add additional classroom spaces. That would be it. Inside of that core, you would have all the athletic facilities for varsity and sub-varsity sports, excluding football. So soccer, baseball, softball, track, all of those can still compete, basketball can still compete on that campus. The only thing would be is for the new stadium that we would renovate in Prop C, which we'll talk about here in a minute. The football team would come here, just like Steele, just like Judson. They have a home stadium, but everybody else competes on their home campus to be able to do that. So they have varsity, sub-varsity athletic facilities, and then specialized CTE programs. So what we're additionally doing is doing some studies around what programs do we currently not have at East Central High School that we would look to build into this program to create additional magnet programs there. So an example would be here, we have our P-Tech program across the street, the new construction is getting ready to begin for that facility, for all of our nursing programs. We obviously wouldn't want to replicate that because it's very costly to be able to do that. We want to put different programs there. Let's say one of them would be like cybersecurity. We don't really have a very strong infrastructure for cybersecurity here. There we could build it in place, and the kids that were interested in that programming would be able to go there.
So Kate, go back just for a second. 3,200 core also means the library,
Yes.
the cafeteria, those main common spaces would be built for 3,200 students. So in the future, to get from 2,200 to 3,200 students, the infrastructure would all be there to just build classrooms. So it would be a much more cost-effective way to expand the high school, given that you don't have to expand those core spaces. Because building a 3,200 student high school right now is cost prohibitive. The cost of that versus doing it this way would mean that we would not be able to fulfill the other proposition request that we're going to hear about here in a moment, C&D.
And learning from our neighbors, it's the same plan that Steele, they did with Steele High School as well. They built it all with a 3,200 core, and then they came back in a subsequent bond to build that extra teaching wing. So their cafeteria was the same, gym was the same. Worked out really well, so thank you. And you can see that it's at 146 square feet per student, which is very comparable to what we have here at East Central High School as well. So what are the totals? So what we're looking at right now, we've really gone back and sharpened the pencil a lot. We've had several meetings with LPA. We continue to whittle to look at the spaces where we can make the most amount of cap room to be able to get the other compositions in. So right now, the new comprehensive high school would be $196 million. The new elementary school in the north would be $49 million. And the new elementary school south would be $51 million. The reason why you're seeing that is just the cost of escalation. Why the second elementary school is just going to cost more because it's a year later. It just costs more to produce. The gymnasium that will be here is $25 million. And remember, it's a lot for them to be able to do and a lot of infrastructure, but it will become the new competition gym too on the back end. The agricultural barn and pen upgrades is $2.4 million to do that, and then the land acquisition, what we would be asking for is $4 million for us to buy future land. So the total for Prop B is $329,776,740 is where we're at right now. So let's talk Prop C, which is the stadium renovations. Again, this was something that the committee came out and said that we've got to do something. If you haven't taken a look at there is no more press box. It was condemned, so it was tore down. Literally, it's just a chain link fence that's there. We have none. So we'll definitely feel that this year and the impacts of it. So what would this cover? It would cover new stands. If you're not aware, the last time our stands were replaced was in 1982. It's done, as we mentioned before, by prisoners. The new press box, what they're looking at is that's even a prefabricated press box, very similar to what they did at Trinity University. Still really nice, but by doing prefab, we can save a lot of money to be able to get a bigger space. To be able to, it would require us to have an elevator to be able to get there. We did discover it's way more cost effective for an elevator than what we thought. We were thinking it was going to be way more, but they've got some current prices that are there. And then it would be updated restrooms, storage, and fan amenities. One of the things that we also recognize is we're out of code when it comes to our seating capacity and the number of toilets that we have available for male and female. This would add to those toilets. That would be one example of what we would need to increase there. And then we've got, if you look underneath our current stands right now, those buildings they're really falling apart, and that's where like soccer and track store much of their equipment. If they would build additional storage, they would make those a little nicer and make them last longer in there. So the total right now is $11,370,087 to redo that. Remember, that doesn't include the field and the track. Those are still in good condition. That's just the home and the visitor side to be redone through this. And this would be through Prop C. I think as you recall in earlier conversations we had, we're required by law to have a separate proposition for a stadium that's over 1,000 seats. So this has over 1,000 seats. So that's why we have to do it as a separate proposition.
Mr. McKay, do you recall if they mentioned scoreboard is involved in this?
The scoreboard is involved in this, yes, sir, and lighting. Scoreboard and lighting, thank you. So and our scoreboard, if you not recognize, is definitely in need of upgrading as well.
What was the conversation we had about the two separate, the home and the visitor press box? Is there
Yeah,
a
so
better
we-
idea to just do the one big one and have both?
Yeah, so we were afraid that if we built a press box bigger than 500 square feet, which you have to add the square footage on both the home and visitor side, and so our current home press box was just under 500 feet. You don't need an elevator. The only way to pull that off would be to remove the one on the visitor side. So then we got some more cost, and the elevator with a prefab press box that's multi-level, I wish we really would have pulled up a picture of Trinity's, what we're talking about. It's very nice, very appropriate. It's like 1.8 million. We were thinking it was gonna be like between 6 and 7. So going that route, it is more cost effective to go ahead and go that route. So that's what's being proposed here is a little bit more of a press box. There is an elevator, there's restrooms up there. You can keep the one on the visitor side if we decide to do that. It wouldn't matter.
What add to that, what the architects and the contractors they work with said what's really buried a lot into that price is obviously the plumbing for all the new toilets and things that are going to be needed, and believe it or not, the stands. Stands, because of the cost of the per linear feet is way more costly than what we realized it was going to be to replace those and put in all the
And the
handrails.
stands would not include expanding seating.
It's the exact same.
It'd be the same amount of seating. That's what we're talking about.
For sure.
Something like that, yeah.
I'll make sure we get y'all a picture.
What exactly is the condition of the press box on the visitor side?
Not much better than the one on the home
No,
side.
yeah. It's going to be tested this year because our coaches and their coaches, the opposing team coaches, are going to be sharing it on home games, and it will be tested.
Now, if you went that route, you really wouldn't need one on both
Well, I
sides.
was just gonna say,
Yeah.
before we do that, we should probably just consider, if it's in that bad of shape and we're gonna have to condemn it eventually and tear it down, why wouldn't we
tear it
just
down.
go ahead and do the big enough one for both?
Yeah, so that's what's being proposed here
Oh,
is,
the bigger one?
You have a
Okay.
visitor side, a home side, coaches,
One press
second
box.
deck, you have 2 levels. It's
Okay.
nice, and it looks really nice.
That's nice.
Yeah. So that would be for Prop C. Talk about Prop D, outdoor athletic facilities. Again, going off of the 15-year master development plan that I know has been presented to you in the past, we're really excited that we're able to include way more than that. We thought it was going to be a 15-year plan, again, working on whittling it down as much as we can. So what we're currently proposing, what the committee would recommend, is we definitely, in a high need, is the tennis courts. Many of the parents that were involved didn't have kids in tennis, but once they walked the tennis courts, they said that has to be a top priority. We've got to get the tennis courts replaced. So be replacing the existing tennis courts, and then we would be upgrading the tennis building, some renovations and additions because they need increased storage, and add a concession for fan amenities so then they come to watch. Softball field would be relocated. I have a diagram on here I'll show you in a minute. It would come over towards where the parking lot is near transportation. And that's because of proximity and accessibility, because if you remember, if you go to a softball game, you've got to park a long way away, and if you've got, it's just at night, it's not safe. We need to get our fans closer to it, as well as our kids. I'll talk about that in a minute. So it would include a press box, turf stands, dugout, and storage. And then the baseball field would be a built-in place, press box, turf stand, dugouts, and storage, and then a covered batting cage that both teams would be able to utilize and access, that they would be able to use throughout the entire year, which would be nice. So there's some further options that we're still working with LPA and the contractors on. Is building out the baseball, softball field house. We're not there yet. I'm going to show you the numbers why we're not there yet, because now it's cost prohibitive right now. And then a 60-yard covered practice area. Again, I'll show you on the map what we're looking at. So they're in red right now because we're still working with the architects on how we can find a way to get these into the project, but we're not there yet right now based on our most recent conversation with them. So Prop B, if you recognize across the street over at John Glenn, that is where the tennis courts are at. Those would be, if you notice 2 and 1, those would be the facilities as well as the tennis courts that would be replaced. We go to the other side, what I want to just kind of point out first is you see I did in green, Prop C, that would be the stadium. But up top, if you notice what we did is we took softball, we relocated from here to this side. Now what it does is it opens up this entire parking lot in this area, and they redo this area. So essentially the parking is the exact same number of spaces because transportation will be gone. Softball would be moved over here. This is where the shared batting cages, covered batting cages would be. That's number 2. And then you notice the baseball field that is in that area. So these are all currently within, and then I talked about Gen 2 and Prop B. I did want to just highlight where that would be. It would be exactly where Gen 2 is now with some small adjustments to the parking lot on this side. I highlighted these in red. This is the 60-yard covered practice area that we're still looking to see how we can fit into the bond. And then we're also looking at the field house here between baseball, softball, and that would be for the baseball, softball teams to have immediate access to their facilities as well, which was another one of the concerns that the committee brought up.
What's number 6 up there?
So number 6 is just redoing the grass fields up here for soccer and additional practices, and but that's where we have our discus rings.
Thank you.
So it's redoing the surface. That's all. It's redoing the grass.
7 is a 60-yard and an end zone turf field that's covered for all programs to be able to use.
That's nice.
And then 3, again, is a field house. It's locker rooms basically for football, for softball and baseball. There'd also be a weight room in there that is 3,000 square feet. Currently, the football weight room is 2,000 square feet. So this would be a more adequate weight room for the whole team to fit in, as well as all other sports would have access to. And then the current weight room facility could be repurposed into something else the committee was looking for, which was a multi-purpose training room where they could do different kinds of plyometric drills, sled drills. It'd be a surface that's partially turf, partially like a traditional weight room where they could do all kinds of different activities. And so we couldn't build that in, but it would be a way to repurpose that if we could pull that off. They're in red, as Mr. McKay said, because right now they're well beyond the budget. And just to kind of recall the first time LPA shared with the board, hey, from a conceptual solution, there was an option A, an option B, and an option C, right? And option A was, consolidating all athletics. And it was like $450 million by the time you built the high school and all the other things, 450. And then there was option B, which was consolidate indoor and outdoor, which was like $420 million. And then there was option C, just build everything right where it's at. So this is a version of option B. Option A wasn't an option because of being cost prohibitive, mainly because in order to do it, the first phase was the majority of it, because you had to build the giant field house out by baseball, softball, if you remember that. So our budget was $350 million, based on our mining capacity and based on the needs that we know are coming And so we knew that 450 million or 425 million was well beyond what our what our financial advisor is recommending that we consider for this bond program. So basically right now, what Mr. McKay is showing you is we've managed to get everything into that budget short of number 3 and number 7.
So number 13 is the non-auditorium. Is that in that?
So number
Yeah.
13 and 11, natatorium, yeah, number
Those are
13.
in the.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was because the committee had that
That's
on
dead
the
last.
lowest priority.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
sir.
all.
It's on the master plan?
11, 13 is what?
That's something that you could.
This would be a consolidated football locker room, but again, that was towards the bottom of what they're saying is
Okay.
necessary. They currently have locker rooms, they're adequate, they're not what we want, they're not the Taj Mahal yet. This would be a consolidated football field house, basically.
Mr. K, on that prop C, okay, I can't see that number. Is that number 8 up there?
Yeah, that's the home side stands.
That's the
The
home
press
side
box that's
stands, and, okay, and the press box.
Yes,
Well, did that, we jump on 8 too?
yeah, so 8, yeah, press box and stands.
Okay.
12 is just redoing this visitor stands.
Yeah, but why would we need a visitor side press box if you build this big press box and all the scouting team and
Yeah, that's
and
what,
coach could be on one side, am I right?
yes, sir. That's the goal would be, is we probably would not have, we
You
would
would
not
do
have
that,
them do
okay,
that.
that
When
was-
they redo these stands, you just tell them to take that press box down. So we have one over here
That's what I
where
was-
both teams can be there, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you just have stands on the visitor side.
Yeah,
Just stands, just a lot of other stands you go to.
Well, a lot of things that, one of the things that Suzette had showed us was the coaches' facilities, you know, office space, their own private lockers. Where is that gonna be?
So Gym 2 is
Okay.
gonna be really nice, like way better than they've ever had. And then if we're able to fit this in, it also has additional coaches' offices in there. So we'll get them close proximity to their teams. But in here is where the predominance of most of the coaches' offices are gonna be. when
And
we
where
get-
are they at now, right now? They're over
They're
on the
either,
other side?
no, they're either in the Stan Bonwitz gym, they
Okay.
use those as their office, they use gym 2. If you go upstairs, there's a set of coaches' offices.
Okay.
On that side, if you come down here to gym 3, there's a set of coaches' offices that are there. Then you come over here to the field house that currently is existing, has several offices. Coach Hub has his own private office, then offensive staff have their own office, the defensive staff
So
have
we're
their
gonna
own
try
office.
to bring those together in less spaces.
Yes, ma'am. So all the indoor coaches and everybody
Gotcha,
can be
okay.
inside here all together,
Okay.
and outdoor as well. The soccer can be in there, track can be in there, volleyball, basketball,
Okay.
I mean, all of them could be in there. The only ones would be baseball, softball,
Okay.
would be over there, football would still be in their facility.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So driving just the numbers, so tennis court replacement is 3.7 million. Tennis building renovation addition is 1.1 million. Softball field relocation and upgrade is 2.9 million. Baseball field upgrade is 5.4. We got a little clarity, why does that cost so much more? It's a bigger field, and the turf costs more to be able to do that, and more fencing. So it just requires more material, so therefore that's the reason why it just costs that much more. It's not that it's a Title IX, they're gonna get all the exact same types of facilities, it's just a smaller field because it's softball in comparison to baseball. Covered batting cages is $881,000, and so what that gets us right now is the total Prop D, as it stands, is at $14,126,162. Now, right now, after even making some adjustments to the outdoor field house for baseball and softball, we're still sitting at $1.1 million in addition to the 14. So that's not included yet. And then the 60-yard covered practice is 3.4 million. So when you combine what we originally talked about in Prop D with what we're still trying to see how we can fit in, it brings us total for Prop D to $28.6 million, which is, when we think about our total cost, what it's going to impact us to, it gets to be 10 million. So we're not there yet. We haven't refined it. We're going to continue to work with the committee, work with LPA, see how we can refine those numbers to get it closer where we can fit within our cap. So the totals for Prop B, C, and D. So Prop B again is 329.7 million. Prop C, remember B is facilities, new builds, so the new high school, the elementary school, and all the others that I talked about. Prop C is the stadium. Prop D is all of those outdoor facilities. It gets us to $355,272,989 right now as it stands. If we added to the Prop D, that additional 20, to the 28 million, you're gonna be at $383, $969 and 151. So we're well over what we've been working with our financial advisor on if we build in these. So part of that is a reminder that it was a 15-year plan, but we're not there yet. We're gonna continue to work on Prop D to see how we can get that to be more reasonable. So we did go back with Victor to look at our tax impact. So now we said, since we're at 355, could we get it to 360? He said it's actually very doable. If we pass all propositions, and then we still got to close out 22 bond. So we still have a lingering 2+ cents from that when those bonds are sold that are going to be added. I'm going to talk about what that impact is. The 22 bond plus this bond is going to add a total to the INS tax rate of 19 cents. So that's after several years of selling all the bonds. This would be beyond 2027.
Question,
Yes, sir.
back it up to the total, to 383.
Yes, sir.
Aren't you kind of double dipping on that total? Prop D, up above is 14.1. Total is 355. And
Right.
you come back to the 28, isn't that already including?
Yeah, that's the new.
No.
I see what you're saying.
You're including that 11 and 3, which makes it 28.6. But that 14 is before you add the 11 and 3. So that 28.6 is already including the 14. So really, you're adding
You're adding 11,
You're adding 11 and 3
point whatever.
already.
Gotcha,
again.
I'm tracking you, yeah,
So the 383
Down to
is
14.1
actually too
twice.
much.
gotcha.
You got it back to 14.1.
Yeah, you gotta back up,
All right,
yeah, you.
Somebody got a
back out-
calculator?
Back out to 14,
real quick.
back out to
I'm tracking you,
14,
thank you.
and you got the 383.
We'll work on that. We'll get you the new number.
Dang.
So,
the
969, 151 minus 14, 126, 162.
Yeah, no, I'll get it to you. So, yeah, do you?
383,969,151 minus 14, 126, 162.
Good catch.
369, 842.
So 369. So we're about 9 million over still, even if we go to the 360. So we're still beyond,
Yeah.
I think is the key right now.
Yeah.
9 and almost 10 million, good catch. We'll make that adjustment. Thank you for catching that.
That's a good
That
catch.
was a really good catch. So we'll fix that.
Damn, I'm awake.
So again, closing out 22 and adding that 360, so even if we cap it at 360, it's going to bring our total INS tax rate to 19 cents, which would take us from 22 to 41 total, once all the bonds are sold. If we add the 5 cents TRE to the M&O, it's going to take us from 67 cents to 72 cents, so taxpayers vote for that. What that's going to do is get our total tax rate to $1.17 by 2027. So a couple reminders, if you remember 65 and olders, they qualify for the homestead exemption, they will have no tax increase with regards to this. And if, just as a reminder, in 2017, our total tax rate was $1.34. So even after all the bonds are sold by 2027, we're still 17 cents shorter than where we were at in 2017 when it comes to our total tax rate. So we still,
And that's new factual information that I've learned, so that's important, speaking to
Yes.
voters when we were talking to them. I didn't know that it's frozen unless.
they make substantial, they make significant improvements in their loan.
Well, Judy
Who
will,
determines that?
Judy will report in a little bit during the budget workshop. We have over 5,000 taxpayers who pay zero.
Who determines the significant improvement? The Bear County?
The appraiser,
Yeah.
Bear County appraiser.
So
How
where do
many?
we,
Over 5,000?
Over 5,000 who pay zero.
That's good factual information also.
And it doesn't matter what happens with the bonds, they're still paying zero.
Right.
where are we at today on, like you're saying, it takes us back to 2017?
89 cents. We're at 89 cents today.
Is there a reason why we're not calling it the favor?
Just semantics, and it's got kind of a negative connotation. So it was kind of per our bond attorneys, they recommended.
So in the survey, they actually said, when educating the person taking the survey, that when they understood what it was, they they tended to support it more than if we called it a tax ratification election.
Or the voter approved kind of is
Yeah.
significant also,
Yeah.
like we're allowing you to approve this. We need it, we're saying we need it, but we're still allowing you to approve that.
I guess what gets lost in it is what it's for. It's for teacher salaries. So Prop A, B, C, and D, and just educating around what's in each prop is what the survey indicated would be more effective at educating the voter.
So that's kind of why we developed the logo that you see in the corner that it's talking about, doesn't say bond, it says prop, so it makes sense there. But just as a summary, what we'd be proposing in the August board meeting from the committee would be for Prop A for the tax ratification, 5 cents to the M&O, Prop B for new schools and facilities at $329 million, Prop C for stadium renovations at $3.7 million, and then Prop D for athletic
11.3.
11.3, yeah, okay, sorry, 11.3 million, and Prop D, outdoor athletic facility improvements, at currently right now at 14.1 million, with the option still for us to find a way to somehow suck up the baseball, softball field house and the outdoor, covered 60-yard practice facility as well.
So while we're on that subject, and Ginger had mentioned, I think last time, can we make a note to reactivate the vendor request form, or partner request form for funding if they'd like to?
Yeah, so-
You said y'all had
uh-huh.
had that at one point in time, and there's no reason why we shouldn't ask for, if they would like to, advertise and supplement some kind, it doesn't hurt to ask, and I thought you had said something about having to like reactivate that,
Yeah, so maybe the distinguishing point here is it wouldn't necessarily be a strategy for us to get funding to avoid having to go to the voters for it,
right,
but it would be it's maybe one of the more powerful ways to generate funds
Yes.
right.
over,
And
for
then
the
there's always
future.
the what if.
Yeah,
It could help if, I don't want to say it out loud.
yeah.
Yeah. But when we're in this process, I don't think it's a bad time to get people to buy into our growth and our future, what we're trying to do up here.
And if you have
that
people
we-
supporting it, big
Yeah.
name companies, then maybe the voters might.
I agree. Yeah. So if we can make a note to,
Welcome.
I don't know what that looks like, or,
Yes, we've got a manual that kind of maps out the value of any of the signage
yeah,
and advertisements and kind of what comes with each package. So if you invest in $5,000, this is what you could get as a business owner to advertise your business and to show support for the district or specific programs. So we will definitely want to resurrect that.
And we have a plan for if it doesn't, moving forward, those are press box that are right.
So we currently have, what we're going to be using this summer, we're going to be using the school year, is a portable press box that'll be on the track, kind of closer
Oh,
towards the school
yeah.
board
We'll own
side.
that after this year. We're going to buy it. We own it.
So we'll,
We can repurpose it, but that's what we'll be using now in the
But you
future.
until,
you're only about 8 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
It's not-
that's a plus,
But at least they can see the field.
right. And they just need to commentate.
Any other questions? Just
That was good, thank you so much. Anybody?
good catch.
Hey, a real quick question, I think you alluded to, so there was a tax attorney or somebody that y'all had at the, what was, I already forgot the acronyms, I'm not good with acronyms, but
Under DLT?
Yes. So they had, and I wasn't able to be there, I had to leave, but you said we might have, what we can say, what we can't say,
Oh, yeah.
when we're out and about.
Yes, sir. So we have Rose from our tax firm tentatively scheduled for during one of our upcoming board workshops, either the board self-evaluation or the operating procedure review. Either one of those two, we're going to try to get on either one of those to provide a kind of a do's and don'ts.
You can also find out, there's actually a course on that.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
85% of districts in our area pass their,
Say it again?
85% of districts in Texas, they pass their data election. So their communities are they're knowing what's happening in their areas.
Okay, I'm up, but I would like to suggest that I'm at my finest at 5:30 in the morning. So maybe next year we can have the budget workshop at 5:30 in the morning. And you can see Judy at her best. Right now, it's kind of, I should be in my recliner sleeping. Okay, for the board budget workshop, we have 4 different funds that y'all have to approve. But mainly tonight, we're just going to talk about the general fund, because that's the big one. But y'all also have to approve child nutrition, which is food service, debt service, and the capital projects fund. So let's continue with the general fund. Let's first talk about how we get our money. The state determines the school district needs. Are local dollars enough to fill the bucket based on assumed mandatory local tax rate? And if it's not, then they top it off with state dollars. Or if it is, then you don't get state dollars. We're getting more and more to the area where the state doesn't think we need additional dollars. The general operating budget, what I'm just going to give y'all tonight is just an estimate of the revenues and expenditures that's proposed for the general operating budget for 24-25. And East Central's fiscal year, thank you, Lord, is September 1 to August 31st. I don't know how those districts do it that have to guess at everything from July 1st to the end of June. As we all know, it's a balancing act. As our local share increases, the state share decreases, and we just had to kind of learn to live with that. And also the funding dynamics. It's just $6,160 basic allotment, which has been here since 2019. And so as you can see, if we get more, the state takes more. So our property tax rate, if y'all will notice, this goes back to 1920. And then this is when compression started, these years. Last year, we had our biggest tax compression. And the school district doesn't really get to set their tax rate for general operating. The state does a formula, and they said your maximum compression rate is 0.6692, so we almost went down 19 cents from 23 to 24. This coming year, the MCR, which is the maximum compression rate, didn't go down hardly at all. But projecting with the passage of the Vader, our rate would be 0.9329, which our M&O would be 71.69 cents. And so it's an increase of of 4.77 cents over 23-24 tax rate. And that is with the Vader. Now the INS, we're not going to increase. And you can say, well, why aren't we increasing when we're going to have bonds that we're going to pay? Well, for a couple of reasons. We want to keep our tax rate the same for our taxpayers next year. So our fund balance is very good for INS. So we're going to use some of that money from INS fund balance to make the payments. We are not going to do a defeasance for next year. We can't afford it. This year, we're going to have our last defeasance in August, and that's going to be $1.3 million. And so the MCR just came out on July 24th. The state doesn't give you a lot of time to do all this information when they come out on the 24th with what your new MCR rate is going to be. And so that is 0.669 with the golden pennies the board previously approved. Luckily, years ago, y'all approved doing 5 golden pennies. Proposed tax rate with the Vader is 0.7169, maintenance and operation, 0.2160. And I know that Shane rounds up, but when we do this with real, we have to go four digits out. So our total tax rate would be 0.9329 per 100 assessed property values. This is due to the projected passing of the Vader of 0.05 cents. Again, IMS tax rate will remain the same for 24-25, and fund balance, like I said, will be used. And ECE will still be one of the lowest tax, for tax rate in Bear County. And as we were talking, and Roland kind of stole my thunder that about the, but that's okay. We have 3,335 accounts who pay zero on any of their taxes to East Central, and that includes INS, due to that their accounts are frozen, and 17 and 4 accounts whose value is under 100,000. So by the time they take the homestead, their value is zero. So we have a total of 5,039 accounts who pay zero in school property tax to EC. And we got this information from Bear Appraisal. And right now we have about 46,000 accounts. So that's almost 12% of our accounts that are paying nothing in taxes.
Judy, just for a second, trustees, that third bullet, the total tax rate is, because the board is going to be considering putting a Vader on the ballot in November, we have to consider it, you will have to adopt the budget as if the Vader passed. So what Judy is presenting tonight shows an additional revenue amount of over $6 million. So keep in mind that if it doesn't pass in November, we have to back that amount out of our actual revenue. Just keep that in mind as she proceeds.
Yeah. And yes, and also how much deficit budget we have. Okay. Values are determined by Bear County Appraisal District. And I will tell you, we have such a good relationship with the Bear Appraisal District as well as the tax office that they really came through to Shannon and I this last week and getting all that information so we can have this meeting tonight. But our taxable value increased this year by 13% from last year. And as you can see, it's still going up. Now let's talk about the general fund, the state and local funding structure. The legislative state funding formula has not changed since 1920. And we have so many unknowns because a new session will start January of 2025. And it will be an impact on funding. And probably vouchers will pass. You know, that is the way the governor feels like he has the votes to pass the school vouchers. And nothing's been changed. We still get $6,160 of basic allotment, and that's influenced by enrollment, average daily attendance, special pops, and property wealth. And that's how it's all calculated. Budget assumption. No increase in basic allotment unless a special session is called, and that's not going to happen. And the basic allotment was last increased in 1920. Our maximum compressed rate, which I'm repeating again, is 0.6692. Estimated property value increase is 13%. Our enrollment projection is 11,920. In May, it was 11,150. And this wasn't Judy's projection. This is Pass's projection. And they have done a great job about projecting. Average daily attendance, we're going to be like 91.5. I wish it would go higher than that. So what I'm projecting this money is going to come from the state is on 10,906 average daily attendance. That's 91.5. And last year we did 91.4. And so what we've also had to do was on our salaries. We did a 2% increase in compensation and salary adjustments. We would have liked to do more, but we felt like that was about what we should do at this time. And I was really proud of almost all of our budget stewards. They were directed, on many of them, to reduce their budget by 10%. And not one of them came and said, I need more money. They were very good about, okay, here's how I can reduce 10%. Some of them we did not ask for them to reduce because there's some programs that we have to spend 100% of what the state gives us. For instance, the early education allotment, we have to spend 100%. So there's no sense in us saying, hey, you have to do 10% when we wouldn't be compliant if they didn't spend 100%. And one thing that really took a hit for us this year is our property insurance increased by almost 60%. It's $272,000 more this year than what we had last year. And it'll even be higher than that when we add some of these other buildings that we're doing right now. And another thing we had to do is we had to increase our deductible quite a bit in order to keep it within that range, because it was just going to be out of range if we didn't increase our deductible. And another thing that affected us is in the budget is we opened Honor Elementary, and you have a lot of fixed costs: electricity, gas, telephone, internet, staff. And we estimated we're going to have 46 new positions for 24-25 due to honor and growth of ECISD. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, just for the board, going back to average daily attendance versus enrollment projection, this is one of those topics that came up in the last session. Texas is one of only 4 or 5 states, I believe, 6, that fund by ADA as opposed to enrollment. So we will be serving 11,920 students next year. Based on our attendance this year of 91.4%, we're assuming we'll be similar, 91.5%. We're only going to be funded for 10,906, but still be serving 11,920. So we don't get funded based on how many kids are enrolled. We're funded by how many come daily. But yet we still serve all that are
Yeah, a
enrolled.
good analogy that was in one of our sessions was, we pay our teachers 100% of the day, we keep our lights on 100% of the day, or 100% of the time we go there. Why? But we only get funding for 91.4%.
And another way to look at it is the students who don't come to school regularly cost a lot more to educate because they need a lot more support, a lot more intervention.
So I have a
Acceleration.
question, and so I know that the CTE programs, the PTEC, that's all a higher
We
percentage.
get higher FTEs for that.
When they are absent, do we get penalized?
Yes.
More? So we're getting more funding for those students because we have them in these different programs, but when they're absent, we're also penalized.
Yes,
more.
when they're absent, they're also penalized. Also, what happens on the ADA, we have our ADA, and then we get our FTEs for career tech, and we get our FTEs for special ed and bilingual. And the state, the way they calculate the funding formula is they take away the FTEs off of our ADA, and then they come back with a lower number and say, this is what you're going to get for your foundation program, and this is how much we're going to pay for career tech. What they don't take away is mainstream, and they don't take away a couple of other programs like they do the special ed. And this is, ESSER 3 is going away at the end of August. And so we're going to have to move all those teachers we had at the high school, and I had about 30 some odd last year. We're going to have to put their salaries back in the local. But we knew that was going to happen, and that was the way that we were able to build up our fund balance, by funding those teachers out of ESSER and banking that money for whenever ESSER ended. So that's another reason why the budget was increased this year. We didn't give it for like incentives or signing bonuses or anything, which, doesn't help you at the end. Okay. Projected revenue 24-25 with the Bader is $117 million. Projected expenditures is $121,313,850. That means we're going to have a possible deficit, even with the Bader, of $3.863 million deficit. But y'all have to remember that East Central and their budget stewards are very conservative and are very careful about leaving money on the table. So usually they leave 95, 96, 97% that they don't spend. We never spend 100%. So if this happens, we will do okay if everybody still has that mindset. We don't have to spend all our money, we spend on what we need, not just to spend. But that total revenue has to come in. It has to come in for us to be able to not go into deficit when I come to see y'all next August. Okay, now let me give you the worst case scenario without the Vader. Projected revenue would be $110,786,526. Same expenditures. The possible deficit is over $10 million. So that would be very hard for the budget stewards not to spend their money and to maintain their program. So we would have to probably, by when all said and done, if we didn't get the Vader, we'd probably go into fund balance by $7 million. Again, if our revenue came in. And so the possible increase in state and tax funding with the Vader, my numbers are higher than Shane's, because when Shane was doing his and we first looked at this, we didn't have the new certified values. Our certified values came in last week, and that will give us an additional $6.6 million if they pass the Vader. And we really need that in order to, I can say that right now, right? Okay. We really need that right now. And so what we did for the salary package, which I kind of feel like, you know, we did what we could for our employees. Is it what we need to do for our employees? No, but it's all we can do for them right now. Our starting pay for our teachers is $58,500, average increase of $1,800. Staff paid on the teacher salary schedule received an average of 2.78 increase in salary. Paraprofessionals, auxiliaries, they received 2% of midpoint, and we did not change the minimum, midpoint, or maximum rates for this year like we did the year before. So that no employee will earn less than $15 an hour. Exempt salary staff, they're also getting the same 2% increase based on midpoint. And this one, I've been at East Central for a long time. And this one is I am the proudest of, because we have tried for years and years and years. My first boss, Mr. Morgenroth, he wanted to get rid of the route pay. Well, it got the better of him, and he retired before he could do that because he said he couldn't get it done. Then Jim wanted to get rid of the route pay, and he tried, and he retired before that was done. But with Mr. Toscano's guidance and dedication, and hey, this is going to happen this next year, our bus drivers and monitors are going to be paid based on by the hour, not by route pay, because route pay is not always fair to every employee. So the beginning salary for 0 years bus drivers is $20 per hour, bus monitor is $16.25, and non-CDL bus drivers is $16.80. Plus we go up for 20 years, and so some of our bus drivers are going to see a very, very nice raise. Some might not have seen as much because they were doing multiple routes. And so this is going to be very fair to our employees. Not only that, can you imagine the nightmare that payroll had when they tried to do all this payment for routes? And not only that, we have certain programs that we have to send information to teacher retirement system. They don't want it by route, they want it by hour. And so they would have to calculate. So this is going to make our payroll employees much happier. It's going to make our drivers and monitors get a nice raise, and it's going to be very fair. So I'm very proud of this. And I didn't have to retire. So
To see it happen.
and the administrative staff received also 2% of midpoint of their pay grade. And we're still going to do the attendance incentives for the teachers, librarians, and nurses for each semester, and the attendance incentive for instructional paraprofessionals. And this attendance incentives are for the teachers and the staff that have to use subs. Because we feel like if they can stay in the classroom, it will cost us less of having to pay ESS for subs, but what the real benefit is those students get those teachers every day. And our attendance incentive program went up by 140,000 this year versus last year. So we feel like it'll, if we promote it, it'll only get better. And we didn't change any stipends, but we did add resident host teacher, stipend and AP test participation and pass rate stipends for teachers, but all other stipends remain the same. Do y'all have any questions?
Quick question, and I hope I don't show my ignorance too much here, but can you give me an example like I got a question asked, and it was, I don't know that I did it justice, but it said 2% increase based on midpoint. Right? How does, are all the salaried employees at midpoint, or what is midpoint?
Midpoint is a different range for each pay grade you're on.
Okay.
It's a different range for if you're an instructional para and you are Title I para on a pay grade 2 or 1, or let's say you're a life skills para and you're on a 2 or 4. Their midpoint is higher than the 2 or 1. The midpoint for the support paras are higher for the ones who are the executive assistants to the directors and to the admin council than for the receptionist. So what we did last year is TASB did a study and we changed our midpoints and our minimums and everything last year. And so that caused quite a bit of increase for our employees because we did change our midpoints. You really should change your midpoints at least every other year. We felt like we didn't need to change them this year because we changed them so dramatically last year. And so that is how a salary is determined, is by the midpoint.
So somebody making $15 an hour, midpoint, that's what their raise is based on?
Well, no, that would be minimum.
Okay.
Midpoint for that pay grade probably is about $18. So it would be 2% of that. So that'd be like 32, 36 cents per hour. And so while somebody who's a higher pay grade, their hourly rate might be 56 cents per hour. And I'm just coming this off the top of my head of what they are.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. You're usually very conservative when you estimate your, the attendance. So are you being really conservative and thinking that maybe it might be crazy out of control and we have a lot more than, you know what I mean?
I am hoping for better attendance.
She wanted to do 92%, and I said, Judy, we're at 91.4, and we were all about it this year, so that assumption
I
gives
know
us
she's
more
very
revenue.
conservative. Yeah, I know.
So she was a little more conservative than maybe we would have been in previous
Yeah.
years to be at 91.5.
Yeah. You know, the other day at welcome back for the administrators, you know, Roland threw me under the bus on the percent of raise we were given, and I'm just teasing of our staff. So this time, Roland, I wanted a higher attendance rate. Okay, and I was able to get almost all of the starting pay for salary for the area districts. The only one I couldn't is from Somerset ISD because they wouldn't share it because their board had not adopted it, while others said, okay, Judy, I'll tell you what we're going to start with, but our board has not approved it. And you can see Southside, their R is high up there. And the reason why? They have the full 17 cents for the Vader, so they can afford that. So they're going to be $61,777, and you go all the way down to Shirk Cibolo, and $55,500 is what their starting salary is. But you can see East Central is down here. We would like to be closer up here, closer to the top, and that is a goal eventually to get up to where the north sides and the Judsons and the Southwest are. But
A
sometimes...
couple of points there to be aware of. Judy pointed out the Baker, the South Side. So several of those, the majority of those districts above us have passed the full 17 cents that you could levy with a Baker. So they are generating more revenue than we're generating, number one. Number two, that's just the starting teacher salary, and remember, our strategy, the board strategy has been to invest less on brand-new teachers and more on 5, 10, 15, and 20-year veterans. So when you extrapolate this out and compare their fifth-year teacher's salary to our fifth-year teacher's salary, we now get up into the top 5. And actually the top 3 with 10-year and 15-year teachers and 20-year teachers. So we just distributed it differently. We didn't put the majority of our eggs in the recruitment of new zero-year teachers. So
It would be interesting to see what the retention rate is parallel to the starting salary and that kind of thing.
That's a really good idea, and I'll work on trying to get that. And also, I will also work on showing y'all where we're at in 5 years, where we're at 10 years, where we are in 15 years, because we do better as we go up compared to some of these. We move way up. But like I said, they barely wanted to give me what their starting salary was. I knew not to push it and ask for the whole salary schedule.
Do you have the other districts that are for sure that have the full 17 cents?
I'm sorry.
The ones that have the full 17 cents aside from Southside? Do you
I know
So-
Somerset does. I know
Southside, Edgewood, South San, Harlandale, I know those for sure. The DOD schools, because of impact aid, they get like 18,000 per student. Like Lackland, Fort Sam, and Randolph Field generate way more revenue than all the non-DOD schools.
I know that Judson Northside and I believe Southwest have not passed a grade.
I don't think they are. Like I said, I do know Southside, Edgewood, South San, and Harlandale.
You know, and I thought it was interesting when I was talking to Randolph Field this morning, we were talking about budget, and she said, Judy, we can't adopt a deficit budget. The federal government won't let us. So she said, if we don't have the money, we just have to make cuts. And I was just surprised to hear that. But evidently, they don't have too much cuts they have to make. So this shows you how the fund balance has been since 2009, 2010. I'm hoping at the 23-24 that our fund balance will be around $22 million. And you can see when ESSER came in, how we started banking that money. So that way when we started to need it for others, we would have it. And conclusion, all figures presented in this presentation are estimates, and not the final 24-25, you know? So we're still refining our numbers for payroll. Donna is doing a tremendous job of figuring everybody's, where they're at on the salary schedule, and that we have everybody listed.
Right at the top.
And we're going to finalize the revenue and expenditures for y'all when y'all adopt the budget on the August 15th. And we will do that on August 15th. So y'all have any other questions or comments? Or?
I had a little fudge there, huh? A little fudge a little bit, huh?
Yeah. And when we present it in August, it'll be presented by function. So you'll know how much it is by instructional all the way to plant maintenance and our admin. And it'll also be by revenue source, so it'll be in detail. Well, right now, it's in total.
Thank you, Ms. Judy.
Appreciate your disclaimer, Judy.
Okay,
I'll do that.
5:30 next year.
Whenever I did my budget, I was gonna have fudge.
Okay, next item on the agenda is,
Close up.
after the budget workshop,
7:02.
Close up.
is the goal setting workshop. Okay.
So trustees, we're going to go at this a little bit differently than we have in the past. As you're aware, we have 4 priority areas as a district, and as staff are concerned, we have annual results measures within each of those. Priority 1 being teaching and learning, 2 being staff, 3 being partnerships, and 4 being fiscal stewardship. However, since last year, we've had ISO training together, we've been to a System of Great Schools workshop, and we learned some things about North Star goals and student outcome goals. And so we as a team have been working on some possibilities for your consideration to adopt a North Star Star goal, and I know you've heard me talking to staff using the North Star goal phrase, but what we're going to have you think about tonight and give us some feedback on is a North Star goal related to quality seats, which will go through that exercise of a quality seat analysis and set some goals long-term for improving the number of quote-unquote seats in A and B schools, right? This is for the system of great schools work. And then some long-range goals or board goals that I have been calling North Star goals that we believe are really critical areas for us to make significant progress towards all students reaching. And so those are the things that the team's going to kind of present that we want to hear your feedback on. And if you get to the place where you feel comfortable with what you guys have created today, there's an action item for you guys to consider adopting your board goals. Then we'll direct where we go with our annual results measures and strategies, et cetera. So I'll turn it over to the curriculum team.
All right, so some of the long-term goals that we'll be striving for by 2030. So that's years down the line, but that's the desired state of where we feel that we would need to go. And so, so the first goal will be by the end of the year, all third graders will be at or above grade level in reading. And we have another one of by the end of the year, all fifth graders will be at or above grade level of numeracy and literacy. By the end of the year, all eighth graders will take and successfully complete algebra. By the end of the year, all 11th graders will demonstrate college readiness. And by graduation, all students will demonstrate post-secondary readiness. And so what we're going to do with these is we're going to go through and say what our current status is and why these goals are important. Okay? But before we get to that point, it's important to understand that we have to be able to look at different data along the way to measure the progress. So when we look at the goals that are aligned with third grade, fifth grade, and eighth grade, we're talking about on grade level. Well, when you think about STAR, the STAR test, right? When you hit meets, that's considered on grade level. Okay, and so when you think about hitting meets, it's basically saying that they are ready for the next grade level with limited assistance. They can do it. But now if you were to lower that and say we're trying to hit approaches, which could be considered passing, they still need intervention. And we want our students to be able to go to the next grade level and it not be a problem with that coursework. So for third grade, fifth grade, reading and math, and eighth grade, algebra 1, it would be meets on the STAR test in order to measure those goals.
So you guys have heard us talk a lot about college, career, and military ready metrics that TEA utilizes to identify whether our students are ready for post-secondary life. And so the first, or this middle column here is in regards to college readiness. So this is just really identifying the ways that our students can demonstrate that they are ready to enter the college pipeline or the university pipeline. So that's the Texas Success Initiative, TSI, in both math and English. They can earn a dual credit course in either math or English. They can also meet criteria on any AP exam. So even if it was AP Spanish 4, if it was AP Drawing 4, if they score a 3 or higher on that exam, that will count as college readiness. They earn an associate's degree or they qualify for an on-ramps course credits. And so we do have all of these options available to our students. And so we keep track of that as well. In 12th grade, we're talking about college or military readiness. So we're saying all of our students by 2030 that are in 11th grade leaving us going into 12th grade will have met one of these indicators. And then we're adding on an additional layer here to say that by 12th grade, the completion of 12th grade, they will complete one of our workforce or military readiness indicators. So they will meet, they'll earn the industry-based certification that's aligned to a program of study within career and tech ed. They'll graduate with an IEP, which is how we service our special education students, and have workforce readiness. They will graduate with an advanced diploma and receive special education services, meaning they're a special education student who graduates with an endorsement on their diploma, or they can enlist in the U.S. Armed Forces or Texas National Guard. So we're saying that they will meet one of these college readiness standards and in addition to earn one of these.
So the first goal, by the end of the year, all third graders will be at or above grade level in reading. Why is it important? This is the fundamental skill and foundational. If we can hit this right, everything else will be a little bit more smooth sailing. But we know if we don't hit that right, then we're talking about increased dropout rates. We're talking about there's a 78% chance of them not catching up if not reading on level. So then you struggle with trying to fill gaps year after year after year. And so we want to make sure that students are college and career ready, and we understand if we lay this work, it will help. But then also we understand that even though we're focused on third grade, it's now forcing us to say what needs to happen in second grade and what needs to happen in first grade, because all of those are foundational skills or foundational courses that they need in grades in order to hit this mark. So our current status right now, when you think about ECISD for third graders, 27% of those students are basically at or above grade level in reading. So that's our current status. Okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Yep, go ahead.
Another thing that's important with reading is in third grade is when students really make the shift from learning to read to reading to learn. So if they don't have those foundational skills where they can get through a sentence or a paragraph to really understand, it makes it very difficult at the end of third grade and fourth grade and fifth grade, where they're not taught how to decode words so much anymore, but now they're having to synthesize what they're reading and apply it in a new situation. So third grade is that critical age developmentally where that shift happens. All right, then continuing on, long-term goal 2 is by fifth grade, all of our students will be at or above grade level in numeracy and literacy. So it continues on that cadence of third grade, getting to that meets on STAR, and then really gets to that numeracy piece. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is in mathematics, it's that idea of productive struggle. Like when they're handed a task and they can't think through it, how do they persevere? How do they show the grit? How do they get to that problem-solving ability that will transfer later on in life? And a lot of times, like even in math, we would say, when are we ever going to use this in the real world? Well, they're actually projecting that by, 2025, there's going to be 11% increase in STEM-related jobs in the field. And with that, coupled with achievement nationally, there's a 2 million job deficit that will need to be filled because our students are not graduating with the capabilities to go into those STEM fields. So that really paints to the importance of us pushing this quickly. And so, like I said, right now, literacy, we're at 30%, and numeracy, we're at 33%, and this particular goal would be to get us at 100% by 2030.
That takes us to talking about algebra in 8th grade, and I want you to remember that not that long ago, algebra was more like an end of high school type class, and then we went through a transition where a lot of 9th graders took that. I think sometimes we forget how far we've come in education. And so we've been, about 5 or 6 years now where we've asked all of our kids to engage in algebra. And so it's super important for algebra because that's a great predictor of success in high school and then beyond. And so being in those advanced math classes open up a lot of those more tech career options going beyond high school. And what I want you to see is we were currently at about 32% on meets. What I want you to notice is that of all those numbers we've done so far, they're all really, really close. And you'll see that even as we transition to Dr. Holman next, you'll see that the numbers stay pretty similar on those last 2 metrics as well.
So our long-term goal 4, talking about 11th grade and all of our students demonstrating college readiness. This goal is really critical because students who are not college ready, students who are college ready upon graduation are twice as likely to persist through college. So if I'm going into college level courses and they tell me, I'm sorry, but you're not college ready, you have to take remedial math and you have to take remedial English, I am half as likely to go through and actually persist through any degree. Also, the students who are college ready do not need to enroll in remedial college courses, which greatly impacts the amount of funding that they can receive over their college tenure, and it also affects the amount of funding that they have to pay out of pocket for that degree. So our current status, I'm actually really proud of this right now because we did a lot of work last year on it, but we're at 35% of our current 12th graders that are going to be walking through the door next week are college ready according to those TEA metrics. And so we have put into place some practices to help us mitigate that, but this is our current status. And so by 2030, our goal is to have those students have 100% of our 11th graders walk out the door at the end of their junior year being college ready. And that brings us to goal 5, and this is that all students will demonstrate post-secondary readiness by the time that they graduate and walk across the stage. This is really critical because if our students have these multiple on-ramps and off-ramps from college to career, back to college, and so forth, they are much more likely to be prosperous in life, and thus breaking that generational poverty that we know so many of our students struggle with. And so if we give them those multiple on-ramps and off-ramps to take advantage of, we know that we can considerably decrease generational poverty that's been happening with our students. So right now, when we talk about, this is not, I want to be very clear, we have been bringing to you a total number of students, or percentage of students who have met a CCMR indicator. So our graduating class of 2024, 81% of those students met a CCMR indicator. This 20% right here, you're probably like, oh my gosh, that's so low. That was the number of students, when we looked at all of our students who met a college readiness indicator, a career readiness indicator, or a military readiness indicator. They had more than one of them, so they were overlaid. So they met, they were ready for college, and they were ready for a career or went into the military. And only 20% of our graduates from 2024 met both of those guidelines for us. And so we're going to be seeing a significant increase there and increasing that to 100% by 2030.
All right, so when we think about our next steps and how do we turn this vision into a reality, there's some things we've already started talking about. And Jonathan's going to walk you through a sample of the first one. But if we're setting this goal for 2030, then what does that mean for the years backing up from this year all the way to 2030? Because that's quite a bit of time to make a lot of growth. And so we have to stair step our students, our teachers, our community into that. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we've got some specific grade levels mentioned here, but if I'm a principal, I'm not going to wait till I get third graders to like push this goal. What do my second graders need to be able to do to be ready for third grade, and my first graders, and my kindergartners, and my pre-K? So then we'll need to scale out kind of other related goals to make sure everyone is pushing that same drive to get there. And then as we continue our CG work in the district and with campuses, just making sure that everything is aligned to those long-term goals so that every arrow is pointing in the right direction, all efforts are going into these same buckets in this vision.
And then as Mr. Toscano had mentioned at the beginning of our presentation this evening, we're going to be leveraging these long-term goals, these 5 long-term goals, to reach what we're going to be developing and bringing back to you through System of Grade Schools as a North Star goal to increase the number of seats in A and B schools available to our students, or something similar to that, as we work through our induction into the System of Grade Schools and our School Action Fund grant that we're working through.
So this is the data that Jen promised. What I tried to do was take our current status from those previous slides here and say, hey, if this is where we were at the end of last year, and then look at this year and try to set what would be a reasonable metric. What I tried to do is align that to the goals that we'll be bringing to you at the next board meeting. So those annual result measurement, those campus goals. So trying to align it up, and what I want you to see is that like 5th grade tends to be a little bit higher than some of the other grades like 3rd and 4th grade. And so while usually we go for like 35 is probably where we'll be, you need to be a little above that at 5th grade to give a little extra wiggle room, a little bit of a buffer to know that some grades might be higher and some grades might be a little lower. And then kind of coming through all the grades, trying to align it to our goals here. And then once we make that first leap, then trying to just get a fairly linear, just like what's the increase. So you go up about 12% going across here. You can see a similar increase there going across. And then just to kind of add to that, show if you'll give me one more, I wanted to just say like, what would that look like in terms of like, how many kids are we talking about? And so if we assume that there's about 800 kids at a grade level, roughly speaking, as you make that gap, like it's easy to say, oh, you're making a 12% increase or whatever. How many kids is that? So in 3rd grade, going from 24 to 25, that 12% gap is about 96 students. So we need to gain about 96 students that year to meet our goal. And I want you to think about, we have 8 elementary schools. So 8 elementary schools, so 8 goes into 96, you're talking, what's that, about 12 kids per school. So that it's a big, like that's a big thing to do at that level, but it's also something that I think if we chunk it down into bite sizes like that and say, oh, hey, I've got multiple classrooms, it's probably like 2 kids per classroom. Like, I think as we take the big and make it small, I think it makes it a little bit more actionable. And then similarly, what I want you to see is, like our middle school, yeah, it's big, 104, so you're about 50 each. But once you go over here to 88, I want you to think about that's when we open up Valor. So you're really talking 30 per school. And so that starts to become, 30's more manageable when you start dividing that up by classrooms again, it starts to become a little bit more manageable than it sounds. And so just trying to take the numbers and make it a little bit more accessible so that you kind of see like the kid face on it. I think that's all we've got. Are there any questions, anything? I know we threw a lot of numbers, data, and goals at you. Will help me clarify.
I do. I'm just curious, and I hope this doesn't sound crazy. How, looking down the road, how are we going to convey to our staff, our teachers, how we get this going? What are the expectations for them? Are we implementing something new? Are they going to be taught about this, what we want to see and how they're going to introduce that into the classrooms? And are we going to wait year by year to get reports as to how it's going? Are we going to get between ones? This question.
So yeah, we've talked about a lot of that. We're still in brainstorming phases, but even Joette's message to us today was like, when are we going to roll this out? And so we've got lots of opportunities to meet with campus principals to get this ball rolling in principal AFAD meetings, and then we have like kind of one-on-ones with them kind of throughout, so we can really dig a little bit deeper to their campus-specific data. Jonathan and his team have put up this great thing called the Impact Dashboard that has real like live in-time data all the time. And we have multiple measures other than STAR that show projections to STAR. You can talk about it a lot more than I can. But we can get quick data sets for things that are highly correlated to these metrics so that we know exactly where we are at any given point in time.
Perfect.
And you know what's so funny is I had the opportunity, I've been to a lot of campuses since the Welcome Back, and I'm telling you, I think almost every campus that I've been to, they have the goals up there.
Okay.
They're having them, they're already talking to their campuses, they're like, whether you adopt them or not, they're rolling with it. And it's providing the clarity, it's providing more than just making it about our school. You're one school. They're now starting to see the bigger picture, and so every campus they're talking about.
And then like you said earlier, the grades in between, first, second, and then fourth, they'll basically be doing the same thing.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be doing the same
We even
thing.
started looking at early literacy, like pre-K, K, and 1, and like what's that pivotal skill that stops being taught in kinder, but it's necessary in first grade, and let's hyper-focus on that skill if it's rhyming or I don't know, something like that, because we know that's going to drop off in instruction. We don't have time to intervene, so let's pinpoint those specific skills in the early grades and make sure we hit those really hard.
I got a question, and I know there's kids all over the place. What do you think are the causes of these kids having such a hard time meeting these goals of learning? I mean, why are we having low percentages of meeting the goals of learning? I mean, why are we having such low success rates of all these kids? I mean, they're all being taught the same thing, and yet we have such a hard time getting these kids to succeed. I know there are a lot of factors, home life, et cetera, but what do you all see as being some of the factors that are causing the difficulty in these kids succeeding? I mean, I came from a poor home, so you could say, well, that was one of the factors. He didn't eat well. He didn't have the right clothes, so people made fun of him. He didn't have this, he didn't have that. But what would have been a factor for me not to be able to learn? Once I got into the classroom, my clothes didn't have an effect on this up here. So what was affecting this? My torn shoes, my torn jeans. So what do y'all see? Y'all are in the classroom, well, the teachers are, y'all are not, all of you are not in the classroom. But what do the teachers see as a factor that's causing these kids to not learn? Are they not dedicated? Are they not paying attention? Are they not driven? I mean, what do y'all see as being a factor in them not picking up the material?
I think one of our biggest gaps that we've identified as an area of need that we're really focusing on this year is the differentiation amongst all of our students. And so our teachers, it's undoubted, every single school you go into, every single day, they are teaching their hearts out. But the question that we are always asking is, but are our students learning what the teacher is teaching? And so we're getting really good in our department right now about refining the pedagogy practice of actual teaching for learning to our students, so that when the students are being taught, they're picking up and grasping what's given to them, instead of just the teacher just being amazing and rocking it out, but the kid's not really picking it up. One of the things that we are focusing on as one of our main instructional strategies this year is scaffolding, which means that instead of the teacher saying, okay, you're having a hard time understanding this concept, so I'm going to bring it down to you, we're saying, okay, you're having a hard time grasping this concept. How can I create a ladder for you to access that content so that you're still getting it at the same level of rigor? You might go through a little bit of academic struggle to get there, but you're going to access it. And what we've seen consistently the last couple of years is that our teachers are saying, okay, Amanda's having a hard time. I'm going to bring it down to her level, but then I don't ever put that ladder back up so that I start climbing up. So I think that is probably the biggest struggle that we've seen, and we've got a lot of plans in place to really try to navigate that.
I know that one thing that is a problem is parent involvement. Because I know that many years ago, I went to a PTA meeting at Harmony, and real quick, like, I'll say it. I used a little story. I said, let's say you have a class period of an hour, and take some liberties, and you got 25 kids. Class period is an hour. You got 5 minutes to call the roll, 5 minutes at the end to give assignments. So you got 50 instructional minutes, and you line them all up. And you got 5 minutes, you line them up, you're gonna talk to her, you're gonna talk to him, and then you go down the line. And everybody behaves. So you got 2 minutes with her, 2 minutes with her, and then one-on-one, how much can you teach her in 2 minutes? 5 days, you got 10 minutes face-to-face. How much can she learn in 10 minutes? That's it, and she goes home. You as a parent, you talk to her and say, what did you learn in class today? You don't reinforce what she learned. How much can she learn? And if you don't help her, and you complain and say, well, hey, how much more of the salary she gets starting period? 58,000? Well, hell, she's making 58,000, I'm making 40,000, and I'm busting my tail. That's her job. I said, how does she learn to tie her shoes, to button her blouse, to brush her teeth, to brush her hair? Who was the teacher before she came to class? First period, first grade. Who was the teacher? Mom and Dad. Why did you give up the job? Why don't you reinforce what she learned in class today? Just because he's making 60,000 and you're making 40, don't give up the job. I think that's one of the problems. And what you just talk about, the grasping level, that's another reason. But I see what you're saying, that we all have different levels of grasping. I understand that. But I all this time I've been on the board, I've seen these reports, the white, the black, the brown, the Asians, and there are different levels of percentages of production. And it just boggles my mind as to why some kids don't do it. They don't pick it up. And why we have these percentages. And you're hoping that 27%, man, we're doing great. What about the other 73? What happened to those kids? And y'all pushing for, let's hope that third grade we hit the other. Jesus, what happened in second grade? Why aren't they succeeding in the third grade? It just boggles my mind. I said, good God. I've been on this board all this time, and I hear these reports, and it's sad. I go home and I say, good God. You all are doing a great job.
Yeah.
And you all deserve.
They are. One of the things that resonated with me real quickly, learning to read, this is reading to learn. That is moving around, and I'm getting a real visual as y'all were talking, and as you were speaking of those, and to Victor's points even about the gaps, because we hear about that, and I'm envisioning that you have a type of algorithm, if you will, so that as you look at from 2024 to 2030, and we look just as an example, 27, and you get to 100, and you wonder, how is that possible? But about what you're saying and working together and looking at first grade to the second grade and getting second grade better, I can just envision that kind of, coming together to make sure that each kid is not stuck in one of the holes in the net, that the net is cementing itself and catching all of them. And so what may seem like an impossible goal is achievable if, by the things that you're putting in place. So this is an exciting time for education.
Real quick question here. So I see that, I wrote down today, right? And so the number's 27%. And do we have like a benchmark? And I don't like comparing to other schools, but what are they facing today on the meets, if you will? What we're kind
On
of,
the meets,
right.
the city, we haven't, they're released, right? I don't know if we have.
Yeah, I would say a similar number, maybe a little higher for the state on those numbers.
The state is
I can get you something more specific if you like. I don't have it. I tried to anticipate questions. That was not one I anticipated.
Just to answer the question in general terms, to reiterate what Jonathan said, if you look at the meets column and you superimpose that across the state, it's very comparable.
Okay. That's all.
So that's the state of numeracy and literacy in college and career readiness statewide. Now, this is by no means something that we're even going to accept, but Jonathan made a comment earlier that algebra was something that we used to do to graduate. So it's really hard for us to understand unless you put it in terms like this. Hey, Victor, I took you to the track yesterday and you ran a 9-minute mile. Next month, I'm expecting you to run 6. How is it possible that you're only at that percentage? Well, because I was running a 9-minute mile and you're asking me to run 6 all of a sudden. So these bars have changed over the course of your tenure as a trustee and our careers. These bars have just changed, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that we got to look at this and go, hey man, this is our current reality, and we're not okay with that. We want to be there. All means all here. So what does it realistically take to do that in 5 years? Whew, a lot. But if we chunk and chew it, we can break that down to manageable numbers of kids. And if we really get serious about it and realize it's got to be all hands on deck, then it's not just 3rd grade, or it's not just 5th grade, or it's not just 8th grade. We can all see our fingerprints on having a positive outcome on more kids, more of the time, to get us moving towards this utopic reality of 100% of our kids are literate in 3rd grade, literate and on level with numeracy in 5th grade, and masters of algebra by 8th grade. Like, if that's a reality, there is no school in the entire world that is achieving what we're talking about achieving in 2030. And that's probably fact. So this is super aspirational, but by God, which kid do we want to leave out? So this board is saying, okay, 27% meets right now. By 2030, we're going to be at 100, let's roll. How do we keep an eye on that quarterly and throughout the year and break that down by campus and put actual kids to this data and move the needle for all of it, in all of these areas?
It's hard to see that. These are all great, and I've been wanting goals for a long time. I'm a big geek. I geek out on goals. I like them. They're helpful. So HB3, the 3 mandatory are the 3rd grade literacy and math, and then the CCMR readiness. So goal 1 is specific to the 3rd grade literacy, but there's not really anything specific to math. Are we going to determine if these are all HB3 goals? And are we going to add to them as far as like a safety and security goal, social emotional learning goal? Like, are we just sticking to educational goals?
So for board goals, we're suggesting that these, in order for us to deliver on all these things, student behavior has to be better, social and emotional needs got to be met, kids' basic needs have to be met, counseling, mental health, all the things, safety and security. Like, those are things that we'll see in our campus improvement plans, district improvement plans, under each of our priorities. But this moves those
Yeah.
leaps and bounds forward and adds credibility to why those things matter. So as we really try to figure out how to move, 96 kids in third grade across the system, and we really look at those kids that are closest, we're gonna find out if we can just get this kid to school more often.
Yeah, yes.
And why is he not coming to school? Because there's issues at the home, in the home that we've got to provide family support around, right? So,
Do we
it
need
just-
to tweak one of them to include the
Well,
design portion on
I
Thursday?
mean, you could. I think that you can add as many as you'd like. What we try to do is just get it upstream so much that in order for us to actually do that, we have to do all those things.
Right.
So,
I was just thinking, because in searching and researching other districts and their goals and things, they have their HB3 already. I don't know if that was a requirement, that was the one.
so we have the same HB3 goals as well, but we wanted
Data.
specific
Yeah,
goals.
and a monitoring calendar would be great when we adopt these goals, so we can know like with the SMART criteria, when we're doing it,
You
how
want
it's
them every
going.
quarter, board report every quarter, monthly, I don't know, we've been talking about like the quarterly reports that we've been doing, making them about this,
Yeah,
as opposed to
yes.
all of the other things.
And I think as we go along, what we learned about with the SGS, how that whole system works, I think maybe the board, maybe we could get together and learn what we learned this summer when we went to be introduced as being a school that was going to join them, explain to the rest of us what that's all about, how it plays into this, how it's just a lot of moving pieces and parts. And there's pieces that we're going to have to plug in, i.e. working on the attendance, i.e. the e-hall pass, the cell phone thing. All of those things implemented together is what's going to make this happen. We're coming underneath, with some support and new things that will help this to be achieved. So it's going to be a ever-changing road to success, but I think that it's definitely doable.
And I think you had asked for, is it August when SGS is coming?
No task.
Duncan? It's August, it's in addition to that meeting, it's in that workshop. So it's either August or September
Come visit with the
workshop.
board about
Duncan is
okay.
scheduled to come and provide the rest of the
So
board
he'll-
overview of SGS.
We'll learn some more about this North Star goal and the Summit of Great Schools, what East Central has joined the group to be a member of the Summit of Great Schools, and what these goals are all about. And in the meantime, the things that we're learning about, we're doing away with the cell phone time, with working with Mr. Toscano on simplifying his goals, which makes it easier for him to monitor what they are trying to put into place. And so I think it's all going to plug in eventually if we keep putting all the pieces together. So I'm excited.
Couple quick things, can I just say
Sure.
thank you, love the questions and engagement today, it was really exciting,
Good.
and so thank you, keep going,
Of course.
I'm super geeked up with that. One quick thing Mr. Carrasco said, and Ms. Friesenheim, you said that I want to just tie one comment to, the House bill you referenced, it started with a thing from the state, 60 by 30. So they're super aspirational, like, oh my gosh, it would be amazing if we could achieve this by 2030, you get to 60%. 60%. So ours is a little bit more ambitious. But you were saying, like, can you give me some context, like 827, how are we doing? So when the state envisioned, not that many years ago, like an ambitious goal, they said, man, it'd be amazing to get to 60. So that kind of gives you some context. Like Mr. Toscano said, we're not there yet, like we need to keep going, but as they keep ramping up and what we're asking 8-year-olds to do today is not like what.
Absolutely.
I think if we bring in some of those one quarter, maybe you guys would let me bring like a sample question or two. If you've never looked at what they're asking,
Oh, I would
I'd love for you to see a couple of those. I'd love you just to see a couple of things and be like, whoa, wait, like that's what they're doing.
And that's
Right,
what
it's an 8-year-old
Are you
kid
smart
doing
enough
it.
to put it over to me? I'd like to see that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Someone will answer.
So-
I was thinking in regards to Mr. Garza's question, that document from Ballmer that shows since the inception of public school systems, what all public schools are responsible for now can be everything from personal hygiene to, sexual and mental health to,
Absolutely.
I mean, the entire, in some states, driving. I mean, it's.
Well, it's an unfortunate thing that teachers, and people in education do not just get to arrive and crawl out of the car and go teach. I mean, there is, you have to be a therapist and a psychologist
Well,
and a
and
counselor and a,
And to Victor's point, I think
Yeah.
we're going to, we talked a lot about, that in order to move the needle here, we're gonna have to think about the way we support our families in supporting their children.
yeah.
So, I think it's accessible to them, they just maybe don't know how they can help their child. And I think that we're going to have to think of ways to give them the tools in manageable ways that they could spend 15 or 20 minutes with their child every evening to support or reinforce the things that they're learning in school.
Yeah.
And so they have confidence in doing that. And in our community, a lot of times that's their grandparents that are raising them. So, they feel like they haven't been in school in so long, I don't even know how I can help, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we need to try and think about ways to give them tools, to give them confidence to work with their child every day.
Absolutely.
So learning doesn't just happen when they're in school,
Exactly,
because it's just not enough.
exactly.
Never has been, and never will be, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of things that this is evoking in our thinking
Yeah.
that is exciting for
Yeah,
us.
and we're excited, I'm very excited, so y'all have our support, so whatever we can do to help, don't bring us too hard of the questions that we can answer.
We won't grade them, we won't grade them.
Yeah, can we answer anonymous?
In August?
The anxiety of being a student.
So you can adopt them tonight, just these, if you want, they're on the agenda. I mean, there's an action item tonight, you don't have to.
So this is, call it North Coast, kind of like the big audacious, that's kind of like the big prize.
This what everything we're doing should start to align to making that happen.
Which means that we have, what they talk about having, how many A seats or AB seats. You know, all of our schools and all of our classes contain students that are AB students. And our goal is for to have that, so. And we'll learn more about that with the person that's gonna come speak with us, so. And I'd like for everybody to be able to learn about that.
And while these are goals year over year for, between now and 2030, these are something you revisit every year.
Correct.
As well as the board, and amend those however makes sense.
Yep.
I think one of the things to think about, it's gonna push mindsets.
Yeah.
Because this is, when you're talking about all, we're now talking high expectations. And the reality is that the kids are capable.
Oh,
And so that
absolutely.
is something that has to be addressed district-wide. And some
Yeah.
people don't even know that they don't believe. But now that we have them, they're pushing.
Good.
And I think with that, the kids will rise, and of course, with the
Absolutely.
scaffolding and with the right supports in place.
Absolutely.
But this needs to be pushed on. But I'm excited because it's motivating people, and I'm already seeing it.
Good. And everybody's gotta be doing the same thing. We can't have a broken cog in the wheel. Everybody's gotta be in and doing the same thing every day, you know.
And when our parents and our community understand this, they can share in this excitement. That's the thing, I think. So we don't have to try to sell this.
No, yeah.
That we'll have people clamoring, trying to get into our schools because it's just, the model is just,
Yeah.
it's excellent.
And it was incredible. We spent time with schools that are actually doing this and have been doing it. And they have the stats and the reports that shows that it works. So I'm super excited. Are y'all interested in adopting this tonight?
So I'm all for it, but with the little asterisk that maybe we can visit some more goals, not on top of this. This is great for the academic portion, the student achievement portion, but something more along the lines of, hey, we're thinking about safety and security, we're thinking about social and emotional learning.
So we'll be bringing, when do we bring the district goals and annual results?
Next month's board meeting, I think, so in a couple weeks.
So in a couple of weeks, take a look at that and see if it adds that context in the annual results measures, because you'll approve those as well. So there's the district annual results measures that show up in all of the campus plans as well. And you'll see attendance goals, you'll see student discipline goals. So that discussion can.
So do you want to
continue.
hold on
Because
this?
that's all in our information, but I want it like pushed out there, like we're gonna push this. This is what we're also focusing on as a goal about discipline, safety and security, whatever. I'd like to have a couple of statements saying, these are also our goals. And I know if we do all that, we'll get to this, or if we do this, we'll get to that. It's gonna reflect on each other, that's obvious, but I'd like a statement. If people are looking at our district saying, okay, well, these are good goals. Well, I was thinking about safety and security, what are they doing in safety and security? I'm just reading everybody else's goals, and I don't want to piggyback off of it, I want to stand alone and be our own. But I'd also like to have the community look in and say, oh, those are some good goals, you know, something
Well,
like
there are a
that. We
couple
can
goals
revisit
that
it,
would
but I
support the
would- I'm
success of this. Is that what you're
100%
saying?
agree, I agree to adopt these goals.
Yeah, I concur with that, and I think what I want to see too, right, is I want to be able to see, okay, because I have heard from a few community members and others that see that the discipline is not happening. Perspective, right, that's just pure assumption, if you will, too, right, not knowing. But if they see something, to your point, they see, hey, look, they're really serious about discipline and mental health and those things, I think. And obviously, like you said, all of that, if these numbers are going up, we know all that stuff's happening, but we want to be able to let the community go, hey.
Well, I think what we're talking about is a matter of where do you want to place them? So we can include them as